All right, y'all. First and foremost, give all praise to the Most High God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and his son, the Hamashiach, who some say Yahushua, Yeshua, Yehoshua, whatever name you're going by. But we mostly know as Jesus Christ. Okay, all praises. Anyway, what we want to talk about today is a couple of terms we want to go over, a couple of definitions we want to go over. We have an announcement. Y'all willing, we have a brother that's a very strong brother through the spirit, man. Brother that I bumped into very early, and you see these things it's not a coincidence. Why I bumped into this individual, and that our journey, we separated, but the journey's not over. That there may be a daunting task ahead of us, but this brother has taken this thing full steam and has develops a tool that can get us into a way of critically thinking and really being able to dissect this text the way we should be approaching this text. Is from what I've seen, just a little I've seen from this tool that this powerful arc has put together, that it's been a lot of time, it's a lot of research, it's a lot of time has gone into this. And there are certain schools, Israelite facilities that consider themselves colleges, and they handing out doctorates and things like that. And they have certain books like Ron Dalton's book and Dante Forson's books as certain criteria that they have to go over within the curriculum. But that's basically what this brother has, it seems like he's laying out, but he'll be able to explain it. I just took a glance, but I think the Most High is using this brother to awaken us to some of the faults and some of the mistakes. I wouldn't necessarily say mistakes, but some of the faults and mishaps that we've taken through our process of learning through Israel, through Hebrew Israelism, or through that One West branch of Hebrew Israelism. And more, it's really gonna get us more to a more scholarly, scholastic way of approaching the text. Let me just say that. But this is something that he's developed. He has a channel called Street Baptism. So if you're familiar with that channel, you're familiar with that brother. And if not, you're not familiar, just go over there to Street Baptism on YouTube and make sure you subscribe. All right. So just a high level intellectual brother. One of the few brothers I've ever had to like, hey man, let's go over the text, man. Come over, man. Come pick me up, man. Let's go over the text, man. And we spent hours going over the text, and we was, like I said, we was just coming in. I was just coming in. We hadn't started teaching yet, so forth. But I'll get more into that when we, and give him a much better introduction when we go over that on the Shabbat. Y'all willing. Should be around 10 o'clock. I'll put a reminder in y'all willing before the Shabbat starts. And then if there are any changes, then we'll make the changes. Now, what I want to talk about today, I want to go over a couple definitions with us here. This is called exegesis. We've been using these things, exegesis and eisegesis. These are terms that have started coming within, just let's say just apologetics, apologetic talk, whether it's Israelite apologetics or Christian apologetics. But these words definitely are used. So exegesis is a critical explanation of interpretation of a text. Okay, is a critical explanation or interpretation of a text. The term traditionally applied to the interpretation of biblical works. In modern usage, exegesis can involve critical interpretation of virtually any text, including not just religious texts, but also philosophy, literature, or virtually any other genre of writing. The phrase biblical exegesis can be used to distinguish studies of the Bible from other critical textual explanations. Textual criticism. All right, this is another term, and you probably not heard me using that, even with dealing with other translations and so forth. Textual criticism investigates the history or origins of the text, but exegesis may include the study of the historical and cultural backgrounds of the author, text, and original audience. And if you've been following me, brother, if you've been listening, I've been talking about we need to know that you've been in my classes. We've talked heavily about understanding the audience. If we have two different, you're discussing something when you trying to come to, or you trying to reason with a brother or sister, but y'all have different audiences, Shalakia. Y'all have different audiences that you think that the author is talking to. You have to get to that point first of what's the audience. We have to first agree on it before we can even move on. We have to first agree on the audience, but it's also looking into the historical and cultural backgrounds. I was talking about, I've done classes on the political climates of Rome during that particular time, especially when Christ and ultimately Paul was dealing with their ministry. Other analysis include classification of the type of literary genres presented in the text, and analysis of grammatical and syntactical features in the text. Also, it's a level of getting into, is this a poem? Is this poetic speech? Is this a song? And so we have to look into those things also. How literal is this if it's a song? We got to get into, hyperbole and exaggerated speech, especially within songs or within poems, because these things are within this text, especially when we're talking about the biblical text. It has it has multiple genres inside of this text. It's a historical book. It's a book of songs. It's a book of poems. So you have to, it's prophecy. It's all kind of, it's all kind of things in here. Usage, one who practices exegesis is called a exegete. The plural of exegesis is exegesis. And adjectives are exegetic or exegetical, i.e. exegetical commentaries. In biblical exegesis, the opposite of exegesis, to draw, is eisegesis, to draw in. So exegesis is to draw out, is you're pulling from the text. So when somebody's telling you to exegete something, is what are you getting from the text? What are you drawing from the text? Eisegesis is you putting into the text. We're going to get into that. What is you putting things in the text rather than reading the text and drawing from the text. Important in the sense of eisegetic commentary, important or drawing in their own subjective interpretations into the text, unsupported by the text itself. Eisegesis is often used as a derogatory term. So, you're eisegeting. You're putting things in there that's not there. You're putting, let me just go to it, because it's one of the words I want to use, but it's just gonna give it to you if I say it. Eisegesis, we got it here. The interpretation of the text as of the Bible by reading into one's own ideas. All right, the interpretation of a text as of the Bible by reading into the Bible your own ideas. Okay, eisegesis is a process of interpreting text in such a way as to introduce one's own presuppositions. That's the word I wanted to use, but I didn't want to give it to you. All right. When you're eisegeting, you already have your presuppositions, and you're introducing that into the text instead of just reading the text and drawing out from it. You already have in your head that, hey, these people are so and so, and so this gotta be this, but instead of just reading the text and drawing from the text, you have presuppositions that, hey, only these people can be saved, or hey, the kingdom of heaven is gonna look like this. And so when you have certain pre-notions, now you're putting those pre-notions and you're reading those pre-notions into the text. Eisegesis, write these down. Exegesis. All right, write that. Exegesis. Eisegesis. Eisegesis. All right. Eisegesis is the process of interpreting text in such a way as to introduce one's own presuppositions, agendas, or biases. It is commonly referred to as reading into the text. It is often done to prove a pre-held point of concern and to provide confirmation bias corresponding with the pre-held interpretation and any agenda supported by it. Eisegesis is best understood when contrasted to exegesis. Exegesis is drawing out a text meaning, blah, 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 what we just went over, right? Understand it. Write that down. Exegesis, eisegesis, what they mean. Okay, what they mean. It's important too as we get into what Ak is gonna bring out on the Shabbat, y'all willing. I also want to share with y'all this. And good brother of mine, man, that I talk to almost every day. He asked me a very important, he asked me a question. I don't even know, but it registered, it echoed in me. When he said it, it echoed. It just like, what? Man, that was a darn good question. That was a powerful question. Then, I got my other Ak who's already presented to me this information that he wants to just build some foundational principles on how to exegete the text, properly. And so I feel the Most High moving. I feel him moving. But what he asked me was, when you in the middle, what do? You thought it was this way, and then you find out, well, it's not that way. But you see some other people on the other side, they saying it's that way, and you agree with a little some of that stuff they're saying, but it's still some of that stuff is off, and it's like, well, what do you do when you're in the middle? And you got to reset. I think the answer is us resetting and building these foundational principles, even if we don't agree. Because like I said, I don't know fully what I'm bringing out, but I feel like it's the Most High's moving. And so, but worst case scenario, we don't agree with everything he's saying, but there can be principles that we can glean from to improve the tool, the researcher, the tool for researching or for exegeting the text, or we can add certain things to it. But I do think this dialogue is essential. I think what he's come to establish to us, to attempt to establish, is vital for this movement on both sides, on Israelism side and on Christianity. And it could be a tool that the Most High is using to connect. So there is no middle ground. And prayerfully, we can get to that point, but that is a daunting task. That you have to know that the Lord has to be working in order to get us to that point. But I wanted this is the last thing I wanted to bring out here: the Dunning-Kruger effect. The Dunning-Kruger effect. What is the Dunning-Kruger effect? And I've seen, what's that brother name? Terrence Howard. The brother, it's hard out here for a PM, but he's doing everything about with the mathematics. The 1 × 1 is really 2, and he's trying to crack the code and trying to break down some principal things within the math that he feels like is wrong. Now, Neil deGrasse Tyson, he evaluated let's say Terrence Howard's thesis, and he's pretty much saying that he was suffering from the Dunning-Kruger effect. And I was like, man, we look into that. And y'all may find this very interesting. It says there might be affiliate links on this page. It ain't what you don't know that gets you in trouble. It's what you know for sure that just ain't so. That may not make sense to you now, but let's continue to read. It says, have you ever been tasked with making a decision that would have enough of an impact on others that you pause to wonder if you really have the knowledge and skills to be making the decision? And you know what I relate this to? Us telling people, hey man, you need to go out here and teach. And a lot of brothers who don't get up there and teach, they are pausing. They're making a decision. Hey, I may not have enough knowledge to do that. Have you ever been tasked with a decision that would have enough of an impact on others that you pause to wonder if you really have the knowledge and skills? And listen, there's nothing more impactful than teaching people how to get salvation, teaching people the gospel, teaching people out of the biblical text, even if they're atheists and they you bringing them to Christ is like, it's nothing more impactful. And so one would pause and say, man, I may not have the knowledge to do that. And we see that a lot within the body. Not just this body, but almost every body I've been a part of, and I'm sure any other camp or group or organization or anybody just looking for preachers, I remember one time I was at this one organization, Israelite organization, and they just needed a brother to collect the tithes. And this was my second Sabbath there. And he like, man, can I get a brother? Can any one of you brothers get up and just hold a little money bag and take the, well, it wasn't, they, of course they ain't call it tithes. I don't want to get into that, nothing doctrinal, but Let's just say the arms or the collections. Who gonna take them up? And none of the men would raise their hand. And he said, man, if don't no men raise their hand, I'm gonna call up a woman. And don't y'all be up here tripping. Well, if oh man, a woman was up there collecting the money. So I end up going up there and doing that. But some people may have paused, and even I didn't pause that I didn't have the knowledge of doing that. It was more of a pause of, should I be doing that? I'm still kind of a visitor, to be dealing with the folks' money. Y'all don't really know me, woody woo, but but anyway, so it's a little different, but y'all get what I'm saying. While others are trusting you with that power, you're second guessing your own competence, and that's what I'm saying. Me as a leader, I may tell her, hey man, brother Dion, man, go on out there and teach, man. And brother Dion may be like, hey man, I ain't really, he may question his own competence, even though I may see something in him and I may, think to myself, hey man, it's easy. I do it. LA's I'll do it. Brother in the ball do it. And just going out there. What you mean? You ain't no different. What you mean you different from us, man? You been in the classes. What's going on? But they may second guessing their own competence. You may recognize this type of scenario from when we talked about imposter syndrome. Somebody look into that imposter syndrome. We don't have time within this video, but that may be something good to look into. Imposter syndrome. Somebody teach me something. Bring me that information back. What is imposter syndrome? Put it in the comments. A while back, and I could just click it, but somebody put it in the comments. A while back, and if you can relate to it, you're among an estimated 70% of the population who has felt this sense of self-doubt at some point. Now think about what the opposite of that scenario would feel like. You believe you're one of the top players in your group, but you're not asked for your opinion regarding a consequential issue. An instance like this might suggest your understanding of your own expertise may be flawed. This is what the Dunning-Kruger effect refers to. And in this article, we are going to look deeper into this psychological phenomenon and then review 7 examples of it that you may come across in your own life. What is the Dunning-Kruger effect? We're not going to read this whole article. We got to wrap it up. This cognitive bias is based on the idea that when people know very little about a particular subject, they tend to overestimate their knowledge, skills, and abilities. This is the Dunning-Kruger effect. A cognitive bias is based on the idea that when people know very little about a particular subject, they tend to overestimate their knowledge, skills, and abilities. Alternatively, those who are experts underestimate their knowledge because they know there is so much more to learn and they assume others already know what they do. All right. And that's what happens, and I've said this a few times, the more I learn, it's like the more I realize, man, I don't know. I can go it's a lot I got to go over. It's a lot I have to research, and you think that people already know this because all the information is already out there. Just like we just went over exegesis and eisegesis, that's already there. You may not have known that, but that's already been there. There's certain breakdowns and certain things that you may have come across, but that stuff is already, when you're doing your research, you start seeing things like, hey man, this stuff been out here. All right, man, I really need to look into stuff. And then you kind of get humbled. You kind of get humbled. And you be like, man, I got so much of this stuff wrong. Man, maybe I need to sit down for a minute. Maybe I need to reevaluate. And that's what I feel like when what my brothers talk about. Well, what happens when you in the middle? And you feel like, man, I got so much I gotta learn. Man, it's so much. And even when I see people teaching, I'm like, man, it's so much in the Bible. Why are we teaching the same things over and over and over? It's so much there. It's so many stories. It's so many lessons that we can glean. I've done hundreds of classes. I got hundreds of PowerPoints. And I still just have, man, I haven't went over that. Man, I need to go over that. Man, I need to go through Chronicles. Man, there's so many stories I done missed over there in Numbers. You know, man, the Judges, there's so many different stories I can glean from, and so many, you know, even though it's on a certain amount, you be like, man, I still need to go over that. You know, but sometimes we get stuck in that same, and I wonder, you know, as I grow, I see the way people develop certain classes. I'm like, why they keep going over, like, you know, why the classes just like the camps? You know, when you go out to teach the camp, the classes are just like the camps, and it's because we don't know what's in there. We don't really know the stories. We're not really going over that because, you know, there are lots of texts that really don't help the movement. You know, and I'm not saying it's against the movement, but it's just really information that really won't help you in time to convince somebody of their identity or to convince somebody of their nationality, so forth. So we don't really get into those lessons, but you know, some of that's the most entertaining stuff for me. But let me read that again. This cognitive bias is a cognitive bias. It's based on the idea that when people know very little about a particular subject, they tend to overestimate their knowledge, skills, and abilities. Alternatively, those who are experts underestimate their knowledge because they know that there is so much more to learn and to assume others already know. And this is where we see the holes. And I can go back and I can see my process because I've you know, I taped it. I can go back and I can try to, man, Israel, we got all these holes. If I open this one up, if then this hole over here opens up, and then I go through that hole, and then this hole open up, and then we got holes all through our doctrine. And I just, well, just go down this hole, man. You see this, you know, and then it comes a point of like, man, like, man, I don't know what I'm talking about. Thinking back to when we talked about the stages of learning, you may recall stage 1 as being a time when you don't know the deficit in your knowledge. You're unaware of your incompetence in the wealth of knowledge that you have yet to uncover. This is where people who are impacted by the Dunning-Kruger effect are. And a lot of times we get that particular knowledge, just like the brother who y'all willing, he comes up this Shabbat. You know, he was there, man. We play, hey man, we gonna study for a month. We gonna study the Bible for a month. And then we finna go out here and start teaching these folks. And we went out there and we was on fire teaching these folks and never was I ain't gonna say never was confounded, but just because you wasn't confounded don't mean you were right. But man, we swore we knew what we was talking about, man. And I'm sure the brother will tell you, man. And now when I look back on it, I'm like, man, I just shouldn't have been out there. I shouldn't have been out there doing that. Not at that point. But that's, again, you just got to be thankful for the process and we getting to this point. But we suffer from everybody in that room suffer from the Dunning-Kruger effect. And we got it from, it might be, what's the word I'm looking for? It might be, contagious. the Dunning-Kruger effect might can get on you by who you're watching. You know, you may watch somebody who has very little knowledge. You think they have a lot of knowledge, but and that's what's happening with TikTok. That's why everybody's experts now. Everybody's experts on all kinds of things. Like, wait a minute, brother, you was just an expert in stock. Now you saying you're an expert in flipping houses. What's going, like, brother, what's going on? Now you know, and then you see these experts and these gurus being exposed. Like, wait a minute, you thought you started this trucking company. You said you had 16 trucks, but you ain't really have no truck. But they just had a little knowledge. They had a little knowledge about the trucking industry. Her husband might have been a trucker. And now she done made this trucker game, and she done went to Chat GPT, got Chat GPT to write a book in a text, and made a master class with the book, and you know, sold the master class for $100, $200, you know, 100,000 people, you know, subscribe to this master class, and this girl ain't never drove no truck. Never drove no truck, never bought a truck, don't know the ins and outs like that, like you thought. And they end up getting exposed. And that's what ends up happening. But a lot of Dunning-Kruger effect is on here, man. Everybody's experts, and this is why they are suffering from the Dunning-Kruger effect. And like I said, I was hit with it too, man. I'm kind of coming out of it. I'm coming out of it a bit now. On the other hand, experts in any fields know of continuous research and the gaps in knowledge that have yet to be uncovered. Because of this, they feel their scope of comprehension is limited because of the vast amount of information that is yet to come. So somebody that's very knowledgeable about something, somebody that's truly very knowledgeable, they have humility when it comes to their comprehension, because they know the continuous and the strenuous work and research that has to go into these things, and knows that there are certain gaps and certain things that we don't know. And you only know that because you're going down, you're trying to get information, you find out don't nobody know. There's certain texts. You can get into this text and start, what was the word there? Doing textual criticism. And you can find certain verses that they say, we don't know the interpretation of the verse. We're not really sure how that verse was interpreted. We don't know. We don't know how to translate this. You don't know how to translate this verse. And so the verse the translation is kind of built off of context. You know, what they thought he might have said, you know, but that's you getting into textual criticism. In 1999, Justin Kruger and David Dunning published a study of 4 investigations that demonstrated how incompetent people are often unable to recognize their own lack of expertise. And this makes sense, as it would require poor performers to have sufficient intellectual humility in order to recognize their own impotence, ineptness. Let me look that up. Not that bright. Ineptness. What does that mean? Lacking in skill, ability, inconsistent. Another word for incompetent. In other words, they have the sight to recognize one's own novice status required. They have to have, in other words, to have the insight to recognize one's own novice status requires knowing what you don't know, which is impossible for those who are incompetent. So when you lack, not, you don't know what you don't know. You don't know it. You don't know it yet. And it ain't until you're doing more and more research till you realize you don't know. So the more knowledge that you get, especially dealing with the text, the more you get humbled by the text and realize, wait a minute, man, it's a lot of stuff here. I don't know. It's a lot of stuff here, man. We gotta evaluate and sit down with. And it may bug some people out, to be honest. But that's how it works. All right, we'll read this last paragraph and then we'll end. In other words, to have the insight to recognize one's own novice status requires knowing what you don't know, which is impossible for those who are incompetent. Often people are unable to perceive the scope of their ignorance. But the truth is, we are all unskilled at one thing or another. The question is, do you recognize your incompetence? Doing so can be challenging, as people are really only able to self-evaluate from their own point of view, which is both limited and subjective. And from their own perspective, they naturally feel like they know what they're talking about. They're skilled and other people are wrong, which tends to show people's view on their own abilities. And a lot of this is going on within Israel. All right, the Dunning-Kruger effect. Write that down. The Dunning-Kruger effect. Man, I pray this thing was edifying. Again, it wasn't nothing biblical we kind of going over, but it is kind of something that's connected to y'all willing what we'll go over on this on this next Shabbat. I pray this thing was edifying. Y'all be blessed. Shalom.